It's time for Waking Up with Wesley, today's forecast and weather-wise discussion with WLOX First Alert Weather's senior meteorologist, Wesley Williams.
Waking Up with Wesley is sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.
Hello there, South Mississippi, and thank you for waking up with Wesley. I'm Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. So we've been waiting for this day, Thursday, because it is the day the drought monitor is updated. And if you were wondering what the latest is on the drought, let's get right to it. We have that breaking information just coming in moments ago from the drought monitor. So you're looking at the progress, watching it get worse and worse over the last month until today, September 18th. That's when it got even worse. And now we're starting to see that level 2 drought area expand even more. So if you take a look at this map here, you're noticing where some of the worst drought has been analyzed in South Mississippi. This information just came out to us basically within the last hour or so. And so you're looking at this new information showing Jackson County, Eastern Harrison County, parts of Stone and George counties under that level 2 out of 5 drought. So that impact is likely going to increase as we go into the next week. There's still not much rain on the way through the weekend, but places like Biloxi, D'Iberville, St. Martin, Ocean Springs, places like Van Cleve, Goshen, Pascagoula, Moss Point, also places like Bendale, those are all places that are seeing these drought-like impacts. It doesn't mean it's completely fine over here in Pearl River and Hancock counties, but I do think that they haven't had as much of an impact basically west of Highway 49. Y'all know Highway 49, right? It's a very convenient area for our meteorological purposes because it basically splits our 6 southernmost counties in half. So there's Highway 49, it goes through Wiggins, goes through Saucier, goes through Gulfport. Places west of that, you've actually seen a little bit more rain this month. Places to the east of Highway 49, you've actually seen a little less rain so far this month. So that's why we find the majority of those drought impacts really increasing for places that are east of Highway 49. Technically, one of those places is the Gulfport Airport, which sits just to the east of Highway 49 in Gulfport. That's important. I'll tell you why in a moment. But here's another look at this map that shows the percent of normal rain so far this month. And you're noticing that most areas have seen less than 25%. If you look at the scale there on the right, orange means you've seen more than 25% of the normal rain. No one has seen that. There's no orange anywhere on this map. So you're either at less than 25, which is places like Poplarville, Picayune, Diamond Head, Waveland, Bay St. Louis, Pass Christian, Long Beach, or you're at less than 5%, which are places closer to Wiggins, Saucier, Gulfport, maybe Long Beach. And then you got places that are in the deep red. It doesn't get any worse than that. Less than 2% of normal rain. And that's basically anywhere, like I was mentioning, to the east, generally speaking, of Highway 49. So that's the entirety of George County. Underneath, hardly any rain so far this month. That's the entirety of Jackson County. Underneath, hardly any rain so far this month. And much of eastern Stone, much of eastern Harrison County, including Biloxi, D'Iberville, where there's been no rain pretty much this entire month. Now, like I said, the Gulfport Airport, it sits just to the east of Highway 49, so they're right there in that less than 2% area, which comes out as 0. So they've seen no rain at the Gulfport Airport so far this month. Normally, we'd have more than 3 inches of rain, so that's running a 3-inch deficit. Now, for the year, we're actually still doing okay. Because of some wetter weather we had earlier this year, we've got 50 inches of rain in the bucket when normally we should have 48 by this point of the year. So we actually have a 2-inch surplus. That surplus keeps getting eaten away at every day that we don't get rain throughout this dry stretch. But let's start off talking about the rain so far this year. So the reason why we have a year surplus is because of May. We apparently had more than double the normal rain this past May. My memory doesn't work that well. I actually can't at this very moment on the spot remember any specific weather pattern from the month of May. I don't have the memories of what we saw rain-wise then, but apparently we had a good amount of rain. It was the wettest month of this year so far for places in South Mississippi like Gulfport, Biloxi. We actually, for the summer months of June, July, and August, we actually saw pretty near normal rain. So we came off of that huge wet May and kept it kind of going steady with, you know, the regular amount of rain for June, July, August. But here we are in September, nothing. And so all the surplus that we had in May is basically being eaten away at the longer we go through this dry September. And we're going to actually, oh, now I'm remembering this because when I look at April, that reminds me. We kept talking about how we wanted those April showers, and we kept going through the month of April getting hardly any. And then it was like a student turning in their homework late, right the moment when it's due in the morning. All those May showers pretty much kicked up, or if you want to call them April showers, kicked up right in the first week of May. I am remembering this now earlier this year. But look, if we go through a dry September, that's not good because the month of October is typically our driest month of the year. So there you can see the normal amount of rain that we tend to see each month. And September's right here. You know, our wet season in South Mississippi is actually summer. June, July, August bring the highest monthly rain normally out of any month of the year. So our summer months are usually our wettest months. One of the reasons why they are that way typically is because of tropical weather, tropical systems in the Gulf Coast region that tend to bring us that reliable tropical rain every summer. This was a year that did not happen. Look, I am not wishing for rain from a hurricane. Nobody wants rain from a hurricane. But even just a Gulf low or a tropical low, maybe a weak tropical depression, things like that don't even have to directly hit Mississippi, but instead could hit Louisiana, Texas, a very weak tropical low. That could actually help us to see higher rain chances. And we really haven't had anything like that with the type of pattern we've seen so far this summer. So yes, going to September, we do tend to see that drop from August to September, although you still get a decent amount of rain in September. Usually you get around 5 inches of rain by the end of the month. Again, so far we've got 0, and the month is already more than halfway over. But then you go from September to October, and it is normal to get a pretty steep drop-off from rain. So that's one thing that could be a problem for us next month. You know, it could wind up like April. You know, this year, normally what happens, April is wetter, May is drier. But I just showed you what happened this year. April was drier, May was wetter. So maybe this year we'll buck the normal trend and we'll, instead of having our normal wet September, normal dry October, maybe we'll have a dry September and then somehow get into a slightly less dry October. You notice the trend from October to November, December is an upward trend. So maybe we're getting our decrease now. We're getting our dry October ahead of schedule right now. And then maybe we will get our wetter November, December ahead of schedule coming next month. We'll see how that all shakes out. But right now in the short term, there's not much hope for rain. We do find today's chances at 10% or less, and most areas probably won't see much of that. We're going to get to some higher rain chances possibly next week. And before I talk about that, I do want to mention the temperatures because, yes, we are seeing 90s each day. But when's the last time you heard a heat advisory or a heat warning? Congratulations. It's been a month since we've had our last heat advisory in South Mississippi. It was actually the middle of August was the last time we had one of those. And we had a heat index last month in the triple digits. Today's heat index, let me see if I can get this to the right time. Yeah, so it looks like today's heat index might only top out in the lower 90s at the very worst. A far cry from the triple digit heat index that we had last month. So yeah, the hottest part of your Thursday appears that it will be around 1, 2 in the afternoon. And again, you're not seeing a heat index of 104, 106, 110. You don't have any of that today. It's only around 90, maybe 91, 92 at the very worst. So that's much better than than last month. Now, that doesn't mean it's like cool and comfortable in the afternoons. To have it in the 90s in the afternoons is still hot and is still technically above normal. You're noticing for the next 4 days, this is the end of summer. You're looking at the final 4 full days of summer here, Thursday, Friday, and then your final weekend of summer, Saturday, Sunday, and most of the temperatures each day are going to be around 90, maybe even into the lower and middle 90s. Obviously, the hottest numbers are going to be north of I-10. The least hot numbers are going to be closer to the beaches. But the trend could be for maybe little less of that afternoon heat. So this is what we're looking at as we go to next week. Notice that even though we're getting those 90s into the final weekend of summer, we go to the first week of fall, which officially starts Monday, and we find those temperatures coming down a little bit. This doesn't mean we're getting like a fall blast of cold air or anything. It just means that we're going to see some higher rain chances next week based on what we're watching right now. And what that'll do for us is a couple of things. First of all, we're going to see the mugginess actually increase. So even though the air is slightly comfortable right now, it's not overwhelmingly muggy. You've been noticing that if you've been out and about. That continues through the weekend. But as we go to next week, we get the push of a little bit higher mugginess. And when there's more moisture in the air, it's easier for rain to develop. And you're noticing the dew points are at their highest next Tuesday, next Wednesday. So just by there being more moisture in the air, you will feel it a little bit muggier. That by itself makes it easier for rain showers to pop up. But there's actually something else that's going to be happening. As we take a look at the futurecast, there's going to be a rain system trying to move in from the north and west. We can zoom out and show you that on the map, and we'll take this full so you can see more detail on your screen. But this right here is basically a rain system. There's basically an area of low pressure about like this. Technically, this is probably going to be called a cool front. There's not a lot of cool air behind it. And as this cool front advances toward the east and this low pressure advances toward the east, that's how we're going to see these showers kind of kicking up across the area. There also could be some pop-up showers out ahead of that front that sneak in from the Gulf as we go to next Tuesday. So as I put this futurecast into motion, you're noticing these little pop-up showers kind of rolling in from the Gulf, but also some of this rain with a system trying to move in from the northwest. And so that's how you can get some better rain chances around our state heading into the middle of next week. You can see Tuesday certainly looks like a good amount of rain on the map around next Tuesday. So I do have a slight sense of skepticism. We are going with a 30% chance right now because all the models are not in agreement on how much rain we're going to see. But if this model winds up being the one that actually is true and accurate, then we could get a nice amount of rain next Tuesday. But you know, we've been in a drought so long, it's kind of hard to get your hopes up. You don't want your hopes dashed. But we do find that chance increasing from now, basically less than 10%, to around Sunday, Monday when it's around 10 to 20%, to around next Tuesday, Wednesday when it's around 30%. We can even take a look at next Wednesday's futurecast. And again, the same pattern will hold true. Next Wednesday, there is technically an area of low pressure that we can analyze right there. There is what at that point might be called a cool front that could be analyzed probably about like that. And again, all of this slowly moving toward the east. I would imagine there's probably some slightly drier air behind that front, so you're getting perhaps some lower humidity near places like Shreveport. But out ahead of it, we are in the mugginess. So we are going to see kind of this muggier air coming in from the Gulf. And eventually you can see these showers that just get kicked up on the map. So as we put that into motion for you next Wednesday, you're noticing these showers that continue to get kicked up in what we'll just refer to as the wet sector of this rain system. So across parts of Mississippi, across parts of Alabama, you're seeing that. You can tell where that frontal divide might be, right about here. So that's these showers that are just getting kicked up ahead of that rain system with the low pressure perhaps located there. And you have this drier air that's getting closer to Lake Charles and Shreveport on the backside of that low. So just something to watch for next week. Around the middle of next week, next Tuesday, next Wednesday, we do have that possibility of some better rain chances. Like I said, all the models not in agreement. We can take a look at some of the raw model data showing hardly any rain Thursday, Friday, hardly any rain Saturday, Sunday. We start to see the lines barely tick up around next Monday, and then they slightly tick up again around next Tuesday, Wednesday, next Thursday. Look, what is that, about a ½ inch? Around a ¼ inch to a ½ inch of rain over the next 7 days, the majority of that happening in that Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday time frame of next week. So not a huge rain potential, but it is there. Both models do show some increase, and so we'll see eventually how much we can get out of that. But if you've been looking and waiting for some type of pattern change, maybe that's our pattern change that we can get to next week. Finally bringing an end to these nice mornings, these hot afternoons, these very slim rain chances. Next week's pattern will be the mornings not as nice. Notice those morning temperatures do tick up as you get more mugginess in the air. The air is not able to cool off as efficiently overnight. So that means the temperatures won't drop as much overnight, especially along the coast. We're going to see more overnight temperatures and morning temperatures in the 70s instead of 60s by the time we get to next week. Not really a fall feel if you ask me. So we're going to lose our fall feel mornings by next week. That's one pattern change that we're watching. We're also going to maybe lose some of the hot afternoons. We've been having these kind of hot summer 90s vibes each afternoon, but if we can get more rain clouds to form, especially around next Tuesday, next Wednesday, that can take away some of those afternoons in the hot 90s, and instead we'll have afternoons in the still pretty warm upper 80s. So that's the second type of pattern change we can have next week. First one, no more fall feel mornings. Second one, maybe no more summer-like afternoons either. And then the third one is, like we said, maybe that slight uptick in those rain chances right now, looking like a 30%. We'll see as we update the information each day. Those rain chances may trend up, they may trend down as we monitor the latest changes to the information. But we're hoping for some rain here to help us out of this drought. And this is the best type of rain to get. We don't want rain from a hurricane, and the rain next Tuesday, Wednesday, if we get it, has nothing to do with hurricane season and is actually with a type of rain system coming in from the northwest. You can call it a cool front if you want. I don't see any cooler temperatures locally as we go to next 7 days, so I don't really want to use the word cool front in case I get people excited for no reason. But it is a rain system is one way to describe it, and fingers crossed that we can get some help from that rain system to help us out of the drought going into next week. Well, that'll pretty much do it for today's edition of Waking Up with Wesley. I've been Senior Meteorologist Wesley Williams. We'll see you again next time.
Waking Up with Wesley has been sponsored by Exclusive Auto Brokers. For the best deals on wheels, visit Exclusive Auto Brokers on Beatline Road in Long Beach.